Hello YouTube! I'm Nye from the Finale Guitar Shop in Sheffield, and you join me on my channel Folk Friend, your one-stop shop for Celtic backing guitar. In today's video I'm going to be continuing my series on how you can use your ears to listen to a tune and pick really interesting chords for it. We're going to start out with a very simple framework for tunes in the Dorian mode, which is the most common minor type of tune in Celtic music. And then we're going to expand on that a little bit using just some basic substitutions to make your chord options a bit more interesting. Just before we get into the video today, I just want to say, could you do me a huge favour? If you enjoy my videos, please do hit the little like button down there. It doesn't cost you anything, it really helps the channel out, gets my videos shown to more people. As well as that, you could hit the little subscribe button down there in that corner if you fancy it. There's a little bell next to it as well, and if you click both of those, you'll get notified when I post new videos, which I do once a week with a free Celtic guitar tutorial. Throughout this video, I'm going to be using a free play-along video, which is also being released today. It's my free play-along video for the Cliffs of Moher, which is a great jig in A Dorian. You can find that in a little card in the corner of the screen. What I suggest you do is get it up in another tab, and then you can practice things that I say along with that as we're going through in this clip. If you enjoy that clip, by the way, and you would like access to a full write-up of why all the chords I've used in it work, including all the jazzy ones and all the substitutions, and also a complete set of chord diagrams for all of those, then check out folkfriend.co.uk and visit the play-alongs section, where for a small fee you'll be able to get a whole pack of 20 of my play-along videos, which will hopefully improve your folky guitar playing quite a lot. Now this is part 2 of this series, and if you haven't seen part 1 already, it covers the major keys and how to pick chords for those. So go and check that out, it's linked in a card in the corner of the screen right now. If you have already seen that, you'll know that in major keys you mainly use chords 1, 4 and 5, and you can break a whole tune down using just those 3 chords, and you can usually do that by ear using a pretty simple framework. That framework is that you generally start and finish a tune on chord 1 because your listener kind of needs to know where home is in order to interpret the rest of the tune based on that. And the other thing is that you will always get chord 5 on every 7th foot tap. Now the reason for that is that in Irish tunes your foot is going to tap once every half a bar. There are 8 sections in an A part and 8 sections in a B part. Halfway through the A part you'll get a bar which is just chord 5, almost always. And at the end of the A part you'll get a bar where it plays half a bar of chord 5, and then the second half of the bar it goes back to chord 1. And that 5-1 at the ends of sections is really important, and it makes your sections sound finished before you either repeat the section again or move on to the next section. That is true for major keys, as we discovered in the previous part of this video, and as we're going to discover now, it is also true for minor keys. So our tune here is in the key of A Dorian, and Dorian is the more optimistic of the 2 minor modes. If you don't know what I mean by that, I'm not going to cover it too much in this video. I really suggest it's worth getting an understanding of what the 4 modes used in Celtic music are, exactly how they work. You can find a video that I made which shows you that, and that is linked in the corner of the screen right now. That is like your complete guide to music theory for Celtic guitar. So, assuming that you're already familiar with the Dorian mode, and you know that the vast majority of Irish tunes that you hear which sound minor-y, aka sad and miserable rather than bright and cheery, the vast majority of those minor-y tunes are Dorian and not Aeolian. Because of that, I'm going to mainly be talking about Dorian in this video. I'm going to come back to the Aeolian mode next weekend. So our tune is in the key of A Dorian. And using the amazing mode wheel here, which is available on folkfriend.co.uk by the way, again linked in the corner of the screen, I can show you all the chords that are potentially in a tune in A Dorian. And the chords that are potentially in a tune in A Dorian are the same chords that are potentially in a tune in G Ionian or G major. And the reason for that is, as I've covered in my music theory video, G major has the same notes in its scale as A Dorian does. Now I'm not going to talk about why that is. If you don't understand what I just said, go and check out the music theory video. So because A Dorian's got the same notes in it as G major or G Ionian does, that also means that the available chords are exactly the same ones. The difference is that now that we're in A Dorian, we start from A minor, that's our chord 1, because the scale of A Dorian starts on A, and then our chord 4, if we go through the list, So we've got A minor, B minor, C major, and our chord 4 is D major. So our chord 4 is there, D major, and our chord 5 is E minor. So if we're chunking along with a tune in A Dorian, our chord 1 is going to be A minor, our chord 4 is going to be D major, our chord 5 is going to be E minor, and we can break the whole tune down into just those 3 chords if we want to. And doing that by ear is the best starting point for backing Irish music, because it doesn't matter how complicated and interesting your chord progressions or your little bass runs or any of the other tricks are, if they're not the right ones to fit with the melody you're listening to, then it'll still sound terrible. If you can just play chords 1, 4 and 5 in the right places, you will be playing a much better accompaniment than if you play something super complicated but it doesn't fit with the tune. So the exact same thing about chord 5 being on every 7th foot tap and going from chord 5 to 1 at the ends of sections applies in any mode. At the moment we're in the Dorian mode, so our chord 5 is E minor, and so we're going to have something a bit like this as our kind of starting framework for what might be the potential chords for the tune. So we're going to have A minor at the beginning, we're going to have probably a bar of A minor to start with. On our 7th foot tap, which is in the 4th bar of the tune, or the 4th measure, we're going to have a bar of chord 5, which is E minor. And the second time we get to the 7th foot tap, which is in the final bar of the A part, bar 8, we are going to have chord 5 for half a bar, and then we're going to go back to chord 1, and that'll make the section sound finished. Then that section will repeat, and then we'll move on to the B part. So we already know where chords 1 and 5 go, and all we need to do now is work out how long it stays on chord 1 and where chord 4 goes. And the way that you do that is by listening for chord 4 sections. What you tend to find is that in Dorian tunes, the main bulk of the minory type tunes in Celtic music, there aren't actually that many sections where it really sounds like it needs chord 4. In this particular tune, there really aren't any sections where it needs chord 4. However, what I will do is describe what it feels like when you do hear a chord 4 section. If you have a tune that's kind of bimbling along and it's kind of on a level, when I was talking about the major keys, I said that it feels like chord 4 is kind of over there. Well, if you're in a minor key, if you're in the Dorian mode, the more optimistic minor, you're kind of bimbling along on a level, and if you get into a chord 4 section, it's like, ooh, it kind of feels like it's gone up a level, and then it plops back down again. And that's your chord 4 sections. That's not a very scientific explanation, so I'll tell you what the scientific explanation is. When you hear a melody, it's like your ear is only listening to the dominant beats, the ones on which your foot taps, in order to select what chord should go somewhere. And those 2 dominant beats per bar, the notes that are played on those are going to be what defines what the best chord, or the best chord family to go there is. So if you've got a note from chord 1, in this case if we're in the key of A, our chord 1 contains A, C and E as its 3 notes, because those are the notes of an A minor. Then if you hear those on your dominant beats, chances are it's a chord 1 section. If you mainly hear notes from chord 4, which is going to be D, F sharp and A, if you mainly hear therefore D and F sharp, then you know it's a chord 4-y feeling section. However, as I said in the first part, don't go through the sheet music and just go, oh well that's a dominant beat and it's playing a D, so it must be a D chord there, because you'll get some very non-natural sounding results that way, and you may also get some things that are very hard to play. There's one other consideration with this. I talk about there being 2 potential slots per bar for a chord to go in. However, if you're a beginner, you want to try and limit yourself to 1 chord per bar because it's much easier to play, and you can generally always do that. So if you hear a bar that sounds chord 4-y, make it chord 4 for the whole bar. Don't make it just chord 4 for half a bar and then go back to chord 1. You'll find that it sounds nicer and it's easier to play. Now I said I'd say in this tune about some places you can put chord 4 optionally. And if there are no strongly sounding chord 4 sections, you can actually put chord 4 in place of chord 1. So if you've played 1 for a long time, like in the A part, We've got this as our kind of basic chord block. We've got a lot of A minor there, so I'm going to try putting in a D in place of the third bar, because that is chord 4 replacing my chord 1. So that would sound something like this. So you can see there, if you haven't got any chord 4-y sounding sections, just make some up. Just replace chord 1 with chord 4, it's always fine. And even if there are chord 4-y sounding sections, if you want to create that nice optimistic lift from the major chord 4, then replace one of your chord 1s with chord 4, it'll always sound okay. That is it then. Once you've done that, you've got a basic framework for the tune. In the case of this particular one, it's very simple. You only actually need chord 1 and chord 5. But I'm going to throw in some chord 4s in the places that I mentioned, like that. The next thing is then to throw in some substitutions, and I talked about related minors in the first video. Well, in this video, most of our chords that we're using as a starting point are minors already, so we're going to use related majors instead. So in the key of A Dorian, there's my one chord, A minor. If I go 2 steps up within the key scale, I will find A's related major. Because in the same way that in the previous video we were picking a major chord and going 2 steps down from it to find its related minor, in this one we're starting with a minor chord and going 2 steps up to find the related major chord. So A minor is related to C, and that means that any time in my fundamental structure where there's a block of A minor, if I want to throw in a C, it'll sound good. Now one point with this is that although I can do it any time, sometimes might sound better than others, and there's 2 reasons why they might sound better than others. One is because there's a C in the tune at that point on a dominant beat, and so it feels like you're matching the tune with your matching chord. And the other point is that chords within themselves are like little melodies. So if I play A minor and then C and then D, I've got a really nice little bass line going on within my chords, which is like that. Something like that. So you'll find that certain chord progressions will sound nicer than others in certain contexts, even though theoretically both might be just as good. So in this version of the tune, I'm going to play along with the A part once more. I'm going to switch out the second bar of A minor to be a bar of C, and I'm going to keep my chord 4 that I added in the third bar. So there's that. That's a really good sounding little substitution you can do. I mentioned in the previous video that as well as substituting a chord for the chord which is 2 above it, you can also substitute a chord for the chord which is 2 below it, or the other way around. So in the case of A minor, I was substituting A minor for C major, which is its related major. There is actually another chord which shares 2 notes in common with A minor, and that chord can be found by going 2 down in the scale. This is a slightly less comfortable substitution, which is why I talk about the related major first, but it does work. So if you take a section of A minor and you are getting bored of A minor, you can replace that with, in this case, it's F sharp diminished. I always say in my videos about which chords go together that the diminished chords tend to be avoided in folk music, and that is because they have sounds like this. So they're not very nice, and people tend to avoid them, and I'm going to show you a trick for avoiding a diminished chord. One of the most common diminished chords in folk music is F sharp diminished, and you can avoid it by playing D major and just hooking your thumb around the back, to push down on the 2nd fret of the bottom string, and that gives you an inversion of a D chord. It's called D over F sharp, but basically it's a way to avoid having to play F sharp diminished. So what I'm going to do in this version is I'm going to play 2 bars of A minor, and then I'm going to replace my D that I was playing before with this chord, which is kind of like F sharp diminished. It's actually an inversion of D, but basically I'm using F sharp diminished, or something with F sharp as the root, as a substitute for A minor, and that'll sound something like this. So you can see there that for any minor chord you can replace it with the chord which is 2 above it within the key scale, or the chord which is 2 below it within the key scale, and you can find those chords quickly and easily using the amazing mode wheel available at folkfriend.co.uk, or just using your general knowledge of music theory. That's some substitutes for the A minor chord then that we've just covered. Let's have a look at the substitutes for the other 2 chords. So for chord 4, D major is our chord 4. So you can find its related minor. You can always find a major chord's related minor by going 2 chords down within the key scale. So from D we go down D, C, B, and we discover B minor there is related to D major. So anytime we were playing chord 4 before, which effectively means anytime we were playing chord 1 as well, because you can put chord 4 in place of chord 1, that means we can play B minor as well instead of D if we want to. So we could do something like A minor, A minor, A minor, A minor, B minor, B minor, E minor, E minor, something like that, for example. That would work fine. The other thing that we can do instead of D is if you go 2 up from D, you'll find another chord that it can sub to, and what we discover there is that F sharp diminished, which I've already talked about. Doesn't sound very nice, so we're just going to use D and add the thumb at the bottom. And that is another one that you could play instead of your chord 4. What that means is, just going back to the thing I said before about any time you're playing chord 1, you can replace it with chord 4. That means that you can replace chord 1 with chord 1, chord 4, or anything related to either of those 2. So that also includes chord 3, because that's chord 1's related major. And it includes chord 2, because that's chord 4's related major. And it includes chord 6 as well, which in this case is F sharp diminished, because that is related to both of them. So you've got a wide range of substitutions available to you there, and all of them theoretically will work. Just play about with them and discover which ones sound better to you. Let's talk about the last set of substitutions you can do. In the major keys, I said that you can't substitute chord 5. Well, in any key which isn't the Ionian mode, so Dorian, Aeolian or Mixolydian, which are the other 3 folk modes commonly used in Celtic music, you can actually substitute your chord 5 as well. Our chord 1 is A minor, and all the way over here our chord 5 is E minor. So E minor has a related major, which is 2 notes above it, and it's therefore G major here. And you're allowed to substitute the chord 5 to its related major. So for the very last little demonstration of this video, I'm going to show you a version of the A part in which I've used all of the substitutions I've mentioned previously in the video. At the beginning I'm starting on my chord 1, then I've substituted it to its related major, which is C. Then I'm going to use D over F sharp instead of the D chord which we had our chord 4. And then instead of E minor, my chord 5, I'm going to play G major, which is its related major. Just on the subject of the chord 5 substitution, you may be thinking, could I also substitute the E minor for C, the major chord which is 2 below it in the scale? I'm afraid you can't do that with chord 5. Chord 5 can only substitute to its related major. So you can either use E minor or you could use G in this case, and I've plumped for G. can see there with a fairly simple set of substitution principles with your basic rules. Chord 1 goes at the beginning and the end, chord 5 goes on every 7th foot tap, and you go 5-1 to mark the ends of sections. Anytime you're bored of playing chord 1, you can play chord 4 instead, and of course you've also got to listen out for the chord 4 sections and just double check if there are any that you do put chord 4 there. And then you can use your basic substitutions, so chords 1 and 4 can be substituted for the chords which are 2 above or 2 below within the scale, and chord 5 can be replaced with its related major if you're in any mode other than the Ionian mode. Those are your kind of 5 basic rules, and with those you can come up with a huge range of really cool different versions of the chords. The last thing to think about is that each different version of the chords will give the tune a slightly different feeling. It'll make the tune feel like it's telling a slightly different story, but of course what people are mainly listening to is the tune, so your chords do need to fit with the tune. If they don't have the 1s and 4s and 5s in the right places, then no matter how complicated they are, they won't be adding anything to the music, they'll be detracting from it. So that's it from me for this video. I hope this has been helpful to everybody out there. If you would like a complete guide to everything I've covered today and the other modes, all the music theory, all the rhythms, loads of cool guitar chord diagrams for some cool jazzy chords, and a complete guide to how to use those as well, and loads of other good stuff, then check out my book which I wrote some years ago. It's called Backing Guitar Techniques for Traditional Celtic Music, and it's basically everything I cover on this channel and loads more. It's also available quite a bit cheaper as an ebook. Check out the little card in the corner of the screen. It's on folkfriend.co.uk/shop. You can also find the paperback version linked on there as well. If you have enjoyed this video, as I said before, do me a favour, hit the little like button down there and hit the little subscribe down there. Hit the bell next to it as well, and you will get a free tutorial from me every week. A little notification will pop up at the top right of your YouTube with some sort of handy guitar tidbit from me. So thank you very much everybody out there for watching. Check out folkfriend.co.uk for all my videos, and I will look forward to seeing you all next weekend.